Well, welcome back, class. And today we're going to be looking a little bit more in depth into compensation. And today we're going to be looking at pay surveys and the individual ways that we pay people to perform. Also, we're going to take a look at how we evaluate jobs to determine how much they should be paid. How do you know the means by which you're getting paid or how much you're getting paid? Do companies explain to you the amount of research and how they come about in paying you for what you do? A lot of people just look at the pay and not consider all the things that go into determining how valuable that job is and how to put a price tag on it. So today we're going to be looking at how companies do that through surveys and evaluations as we continue on in compensation. Okay, welcome back everybody to Total Rewards and Compensation, and we are going to be looking more now at pay scales and the way that we combine different jobs and lump them into different pay schedules. Now, before we begin, we need to consider some global compensation issues. And as you can see, the world economy has led to an increase in employees working internationally. So the laws, living costs, tax policies, currency fluctuations, all of these things have to be considered. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why we have companies going overseas now is because of the numerous laws and just cost of doing business. And the labor is cheaper as well. So we need to be able to take into consideration with global compensation issues some of those benefits, but those benefits are offset by some of the disadvantages of going global, which is an underdeveloped workforce, uneducated workforce. You have less government security in many places, so there are pros and cons, but from a compensation standpoint, you need to take these considerations in mind. Now, offshoring is moving jobs to lower wage countries. That's what I just spoke about. In fact, I was in Central America not too long ago, and Caterpillar, the headquarters of Caterpillar, is down there now, and several other American industries are down there. So they've just moved the operation to a cheaper place where they can produce their products and be able to manufacture their products at a lower cost. Now, reshoring is what we're seeing today in some industries, especially manufacturing and the steel industry. Reshoring is returning the operations back to the United States. And with our current president, President Trump, we have been able to see companies that have been overseas during the previous administrations, they now have decided to come back because they've been given more tax advantages and they've been able to have more flexibility. And as a result of that, that's why you see record unemployment, low unemployment today. Now, international assignees, you have the home country-based approach. Now, here's where you maintain the standard of living the expatriate had in the home country. One of the advantages to going overseas is that with the value of the dollar, you can live quite luxuriously in some of these areas and still maintain the salary that you had in your home country here in the U.S. I've known people who live like kings in some places. The Philippines, for instance, a $40,000 a year wage would earn you a mansion, servants, pretty much anything you wanted you could have. So the pay, compensation, and all of those that go into the total rewards package would be maintained while you're going overseas. The host country-based approach is the compensation is at the host country level. And that can be good or bad. If the country is lower in productivity or cost of living, then you may make lower. But if it's higher, you may make more if the cost of living is higher, or the standard of living is higher. So either way, those are just different approaches that you can take while trying to develop companies overseas. Now, job evaluation, that deals with the formal. It's a systematic means to determine the relative worth of jobs within an organization. And there's several ways you can do that. You can take a look at how that job relates to the company. If it's essential, then quite naturally you're going to have more of a value on that job than anything else. Also, too, what are other people paying for that job in that particular region? Compensable factors, job dimension commonly present throughout a group of jobs within an organization that can be rated for each job. And these are derived from job analysis and they reflect the nature of different types of work performed in the organization. Now, market pricing. It uses market pay data to identify the relative value of jobs, and you can take a look at these reports and it'll tell you for the state of Tennessee or for the state of Idaho or whatever how much these jobs are paying, and you have to look also at some other market data for jobs that are good matches with the employers. First of all, look at the job themselves or itself. Look at the geographic considerations. A person who is making let's say a professor in Memphis, Tennessee, may not be making as much as a professor in California or in New England because of the cost of living. So there are geographic considerations. The company's strategy and philosophies about desired market competitiveness levels. Now, there are some who will pay more than the average, and that's because they want to retain the best and brightest. There are some who will go under the average because they want the cheapest labor for the amount of money. And there are those that will do, as we see here, whatever the market bears. Now, pay surveys, they're a way to collect data on compensation rates for workers performing similar jobs in other organizations, and really this is just a survey that goes out to different companies. And for a steel worker in Memphis, they would look at it and compare it to steel workers in other organizations or in similar jobs, maybe not exactly the same, but in similar vocations. Benchmark jobs that are found in many organizations that can be used for the purposes of comparison. And benchmarking is essentially just looking at what others are doing and then just copying it. If your competitor is paying their worker $7 an hour, you may decide to pay your workers $7 an hour if they are in similar jobs and if they are doing similar things and if they have similar responsibilities. Internet-based pay information, and that's just going to the web and searching. That is becoming prevalent because it saves time and you get fairly good data. You can go to different websites. In fact, if you want to know how much your job, or if you're applying for a job, or if you're working currently in a job, then you can go onto the internet and go to salaries.com, and there are other Department of Labor occupational dictionary, which is, I believe it's called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. They can lead you to what the median salary is for many different jobs. Now, pay grades are a grouping of individuals that have approximately the same value to the organization. For instance, you're not in the same exact job, you're doing different jobs, but that level of value to the organization is relatively the same. So the military has pay grades. You can be an E1, E2, or E3, E4, 5, and it goes up. E means enlisted, and O means officer. Now, an E1 is at the bottom of the pile. They are the least experienced. They are the least trained, so they are brand new to the company. are to the military. So they may come in at the lowest price, and then once they move up in experience and in proficiency, they may go to E2, and E2 would have a certain level of pay. Now this is across the military. Different jobs. You could be an infantry person, or you could do hair, cut hair for a living in the military. If you're a pay grade, that pay grade would be the pay that you get. Market line, and your book has a diagram of it, shows the relationship between the job value by the job evaluation points and the job value as determined by the pay survey rates. Now, market banding is grouping jobs into pay grades based on similar market survey amounts. And you're just, instead of having a bunch of individual entities there within the organization, you're just grouping a larger amount. Now, pay ranges. Each pay grade level can be determined by making the market line the midpoint line of the new pay structure. So if you take a look at that graph in your textbook, you'll see that market line. And then broad banding is the practice of using fewer pay grades with much broader ranges than in traditional compensation systems. So here what you're doing is you're taking, maybe instead of E1 through E9, which is what the military usually has for the enlisted ranks, you may put E1 through E4, E5 through E6, and E7 through E9. You're just using broader ranges in the compensation system. Now, individual pay deals with really if they're being paid above, below, or at the set range. A red circled employee is someone who is paid above the range set for the job. Green circled employee is one who is paid below the range set. And pay compression, well, this occurs when the pay differences among individuals with different levels of experience and performance become small. So instead of doing broad banding, now you're compressing these pay differences. And the difference would be because of the experience and performance levels. Now, some of the things you want to look at, targeting high performers. This is focusing on providing the top performing employees with higher pay raises. And that's what we said a while ago. Your strategy can take several different directions. If you want to highlight and identify the best and brightest and attract them and keep them, you're going to pay for them. The pay adjustment matrix reflects an employee's upward movement in a firm, and that's going to be important as you watch that person grow. As they develop, so too do you want to reward them appropriately and be able to keep motivating them. Now, here we have the matrix. You have the employee's performance rating and their current pay level. You see the first quartile exceeds expectations, 4 to 6%, meets 3 to 5%, below 0. So you could be in that first quartile. The second quartile is the same thing. The mid-range would be the what we call the mean or the medium point, and then you have third and fourth, which would be the first and third, and 0 to 2%, and so forth. So this is just putting people in different quadrants as they are moving towards the higher pay. Some of the pay adjustments that you're going to be looking at is seniority, and that deals with merit pay. Merit pay, essentially, if you keep your nose clean, then you will be employed, and each year you get a raise for tenure there. Cost of living adjustments. These are adjustments made because of where you are living. In Memphis, you may have a cost of living adjustment. They may pay you more because it may be expensive to live in Memphis. But if you go to, let's say, Boston or New York, your cost of living adjustment will have to go up because it's extremely expensive up there. Then you have across the board increases. And these are like bonuses and so forth, and then lump sum increases. Now, lump sum increases, instead of giving you a yearly bonus or putting it into seniority pay, which is the merit system, you may get bonuses. Let's say, for instance, you are going to get a $1,200, let's say under the merit pay system, you at the end of the year are going to get a $1,200 raise. Well, the next year after that, you would be expecting a $1,200 raise, and the year after that, you'd be expecting a $1,200 raise. So you can see how quickly those raises would add up. A lump sum increase would give you $1,200 up front, and you wouldn't get any more money that rest of that year. Your base pay would still stay the same, but you would get the bonus or the raise in a lump sum. And I don't want to call it a raise because it's not a raise. You just get an incremental increase in your pay as the company sees fit. Because if you're giving out under a merit system a $1,200 a year bonus or a raise every year that person is there, then that can get expensive. Whereas if you give them a lump sum increase, you're still paying them the same amount, but you're not fixed in each year to have to pay that amount. And there are compensation challenges. We have recessions, and that's where we try to reduce employment-related expenses such as laying off. That can hurt you, because if people see that your company is not, if your employees see that your company is not stable, they may jump ship and go someplace else. And then we have the gender pay gap. And the studies are still out on all of that. There is a gender pay gap when you take a look at employment altogether. That means every job that's studied by or evaluated by the Department of Labor. Yes, there are pay gaps, or we see a pay gap. But when we look closer at industry-specific jobs, there really isn't a pay gap. For instance, if there is let's say, a study done, and you're looking at, let's just say administrative personnel. Well, within that profession, there won't be much of a gender gap. Where we see gender gaps are in the industries that women are just now emerging into. For instance, engineers. There haven't been many opportunities for women to be in engineering. But now, because of what we see in diversity and technology and so forth, we see women more and more into these predominantly male industries. And right now, because there's not that much representation of women in those fields, there is going to be a gender pay gap. However, as women become more visual, as they become more present in these other industries, you're going to see even that gap lessen. But to say that overall there's a pay gap, yes, because women are just now emerging into some of these male-dominated industries, which kind of skew the data. But we do want to make sure that when we're compensating people, we use procedural and distributive justice so that women and everybody can get equal pay. There are gaps and increases in executive level positions. Why? For the very same reason that I was telling you about the industry. Women have not been really given a large representation in executive level positions. Why? Because they have not been in those positions before. This is a new area for them. So again, as women become more present in these levels of authority, you're going to see that gap decrease. Well, today we saw how companies will take an evaluation of a job and determine how much they should be paying for that job. We also took a look at some of the individual pay schedules and strategies that companies incorporate to pay individuals, whether it's through piecemeal work, whether it's through salaries and so forth. There's a lot that goes into being able to pay a person what they're worth and still stay in business. So in HR, you're going to be looking at these strategies and figuring out ways to determine how you can pay an individual fairly, but still be able to keep your bottom line. Well, that's all we have for today, and tomorrow we'll be taking a look at another dimension of pay, and that's executive pay.